All right, thank you for staying with us on Citizen Weekend. As promised, I have in studio Dr. Barak Muluka, and he is a strategic communications advisor, but with an academic background in political science and international relations. Thank you for coming to studio this evening.
Thank you.
And we also have joining us virtually, I'll start with closer home Nigeria. We have Professor Omolade Olomola. I'll just call her Prof for the rest of this conversation. But Professor Omolade is a professor of law, University of Ibadan. Good to have you in joining us as well on Citizen Weekend. And we have joining us from Washington, D.C., Dr. John Patrick Ifedi, who is a lecturer of political science, Howard University. I will start. Shall we go, ladies first?
Good. That's
okay, good enough. Professor Omolade, do tell us, what is the situation currently in Nigeria? The 10 days of protests were ending today, the 10 days of rage. Have these protests cut across all of Nigeria? Is that there specific regions? Because it's my understanding that there are some regions which are closer allied to the president that have not taken part in these protests.
Well, thank you very much. For Nigeria, it's been a roller coaster. And just like you said, it did not cut across. You know, sometime in 2020, we had the End SARS movement, which was targeted at some set of police officers that were really harsh on civilians. That started spontaneously, and it was really had impact. But this time around, yeah, they said end bad governance. But a lot of factors came into it. From the outset, when the protest was announced, getting permission, so many issues started coming up. But to cut the long story short, you would have noticed that in the core north, we have serious protests. But I would explain why this is so. In the southwest, of course, Lagos being the big hive of activities, the commercial nerve center, we have a lot of protests in Lagos. And the two major urban cities, Lagos and Abuja, they have protests. Then in some other parts of Nigeria, in southwest, there are protests. But talking about southeast did not join. And it's obvious the reason why Southeast did not join. Nigeria is a country of over 200 million people. And we cannot really, in actual fact, compare Nigeria to some other smaller countries, because Nigeria is nations within nations. There are different nations, and so many factors actually affected this protest. For the corner, we are saying what is happening now. It's gradually moving from the general end bad governance and end vulgar protest to ethnic flavor. And in fact, what we are now hearing is like they actually don't want the current president, who happens to be from the southwestern part of the country. So it is really, really bad. And the previous protest, the Northerners did not really participate, and now the accusation is going back and forth. So actually, in Nigeria, the type of protest we have, I would say the Southwest had protest, and I would say peaceful protest. The Southeast, no protest. The South stylishly and shyly joined, but not very impactful. But the corner, Kano, Kaduna, Kebbi, and parts of the country. So it is really, really bad. And the previous protest, so actually in Nigeria, the type of protest we have, I would say the Southwest had protest, and I would say peaceful protest. The Southeast, no protest. The South stylishly and shyly joined, but not very impactful. These had a lot of issues.
Okay.
But like I said, it has ethnic and political coloration.
All right.
So now it is not having the impact that it was supposed to have. Like that is it. Yeah.
All right, it's not having the impact it was supposed to have. Thank you for that, Professor Olomola. Right now, let's hear from Dr. John Patrick Ifedi, who is in Washington, D.C. What do you make of these youth-led protests? We've seen them in Kenya over the last month. We've seen them in Bangladesh.
My observation is that you have a post-colonial state that has not found a way to basically resolve the issues of democracy. Nigeria is a democracy, but it's not a homegrown democracy. It's a borrowed democracy. Democracy is a concept that needs to be reimagined and reconceptualized to fasten to our own native, political, economic, and social experience. We have not done that. And we have not embraced the very basic idea that every politics in Africa is basically tribal. There's nothing wrong with people being primordial or loving themselves. But if you're going to live together, the government of the day, not just that the government must be seen to be fair, but it must also really be fair to everyone. It must be neutral. But that is not really what the case that you get in most parts of Africa. In Bangladesh, the same thing is going on. The protest there is about the quota system. And the quota system, you can't say you're one nation and introduce quota system. If you look at South Africa or look at the United States, there's this historical basis for affirmative action, trying to help one group to catch up where historically they've been held down. In Nigeria, there's no such thing. Nobody held anybody's down. So you wonder why they introduce systems where the government chooses winners and losers. These things create a very unfair political atmosphere that you see that people are now beginning to react to. The Gen Zs are not, it's not a generational issue, but because of globalization, the Gen Zs look at each other. You know, communication is more global. People know what is going on in other parts of the world, and they tend to borrow from it. Let me summarize by saying this. America is no exception to this. Remember, America has its original sin, but one thing about America is that it is always approaching democracy, trying to make bad things better. If you look at America under the Article of Confederation, it was not working. New Jersey could not trade with New York, and so on and so forth. And to answer the question why America fixed this very quickly by introducing federalism, which was hitherto unseen and unknown anywhere in the world, they creatively came up with a system to fix their own democracy, and you call it American democracy. There is no Nigerian democracy. We have to have Nigerian democracy, just as much as you have Swiss democracy, maybe English democracy, which came about because of evolution over time with this kind of protests and revolutions. We see that all over the world, and people fix this and develop their own system. Now, to illustrate, just one more minute. Martin Luther King Jr., which everybody knows in the world as a civil rights leader in America, was once asked why America became a great nation. His answer is profound, just like all his insights into political discourse. But essentially, just to paraphrase what he said, he says that America is a great nation because simply, not because of all the products of American ingenuity and productivity, like the aeroplane, which has turned the world into a global village, not because of the skyscrapers that kiss the skies, not because of the bridges that connect oceans and tarring the whole continent from sea to shining sea. That America is a great nation because it gave to the whole world the most eloquent and unequivocal statement on the dignity of man ever set forth on a socio-political document. And that is that all persons are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Okay. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what government is there supposed to do. If you don't guarantee these things, you're going to have protests and revolutions.
All right. So, Dr. Muluka, how have things fundamentally changed? Is it about this generation, their inherent character, that they simply have no patience for bad governance? Is it that simply the economic situation has gotten to a point where it is untenable? Is it social media that has enabled us to cross ethnic barriers and borders?
Thank you very much, Olive. First, I don't think that in terms of substance, that things have fundamentally changed. If we say that things have fundamentally changed in terms of substance, then that betrays a gap in our historical knowledge, because young people have throughout the global history, especially since the advent of liberal democracy, been known to exercise that energy of protest. For example, you can talk about Europe in the middle of the 19th century, the 1848 revolutions that are spread across 50 European countries and went on for about 6 months. You could talk about the protests in France in 1968, 1978. You could talk about the protests in Senegal in 1968 when Félix Houphouët-Boigny, Leopold Senghor was the president of Senegal. And Olive, when I was a youngster at the University of Nairobi in the 1980s, we had recurrent head-ons with the government of President Daniel Arap Moi over social, political, and economic issues. And on one of the days, my president at the university, Titus Dungosi, was among people who, within the broadcasting house at the Voice of Kenya, declared that we had taken over, and we actually took over for about 6 hours until we were taught that we did not quite know. So in terms of substance, nothing has fundamentally changed. There's the energy of youth. It's the energy that ended the Shah Muhammad Reza Pahlavi regime in Iran in 1979, the Ferdinand Marcos regime in the Philippines. But what has changed is the style, that we now have got the digital revolution, and that if Marshall McLuhan said in 1962 that we were moving towards becoming a global village, that reality has now gone way, way beyond what McLuhan may have imagined. That we can talk of what we may call a global neighborhood. And within that neighborhood, what is happening in one part of the world is being beamed across the rest of the world as it is happening. And therefore, in terms of what social science calls contagion of social phenomena, it's extremely rapid, it's real time, and therefore, if you talk about artificial intelligence, you talk about machine learning, you talk about the Internet of Things, you talk about 3D technology, we are now in a space where a generation that has been brought up from birth to where they are today have been encapsulated in that technology, and they are now the ones who are driving it. They are inventing new ways and new things that can be done with that little gadget that we call the intelligent phone. And I think that the global community and its dictatorial rulers and regimes, as Ronald Reagan said one day, they ain't seen nothing yet.
They ain't seen nothing yet. Do you agree, Professor Olomola, or is this a moment and the moment has passed?
No, absolutely, I agree. You see, Gen Z is coming at a time that, Gen X are the ones that gave us Z. And what I must note is that Gen X grew up with the mentality of education, loyalty, submission, and use of brute force. But you have to understand that each generation will have to its own. Now, the Gen X are the that were deprived of the boomers. The boomers enjoyed everything. They will tell you what they enjoyed.
Sorry about that, Professor Olomola. We'll come back to you. It seems the internet connection has dropped for a moment there. But Dr. John Patrick Ifedi, what lessons?
Can you hear me?
Oh, you're back? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So, So, as I was saying, so this generation, what Gen X, by keeping quiet, could not take, Gen Z will not take it. You know, they could not talk, Gen X could not talk, Gen Z could not take it. So, and you see situations where Gen X will keep quiet, Gen Z talk. And in the light of injustice where Dr. Ifedi started from, anywhere you see injustice, people will resist, people will react. And when you see force out of proportion, people would resist. And we are just starting because we are no longer the world that we were some years back. The world has become a global village. You are in Kenya.
All right, sorry, Professor Olomola, we'll pick it up from there as we sort out your connection. Let's hear from Dr. John Patrick Ifedi. What lessons are there to learn from these protests for the governments? Because in Kenya, the military was on the streets, and yet the protests have been persisting. We've had pledges from the administration, and the Gen Z are still demanding action. In Bangladesh, we saw that despite the reversal of the job quota, the protesters remained on the streets despite curfews, despite deaths, despite an internet shutdown. Are there lessons to take away?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Dr. John Patrick Ifedi.
Yes, I think the analysis earlier on was right on point. I quite agree with just everything that the contributors have said. But like you rightly said, two generations. One accepted it and settled for it. This new generation will not. They're raised differently. It's a totally different world that we live in. There's a paradigm shift in the way people think today. And the government is lagging behind. Governments across Africa are lagging behind and taking people for granted for various reasons. So there needs to be a paradigm change in the way that people are governed. People who inherited their countries from colonialists must understand that they need to reconnect with the people and do the people's bidding. And another interjection is in the political economy, where you have most of these extractive industries across Africa selling and connecting to foreign corporations to sell materials that accrues money to the government. It does have a sense of disconnect. It disconnects the government from the people. In the United States, what ties the people to the government is the taxes. Americans fund their government. Africans basically do not. And colonial experience saw most governments or colonial governments as esoteric, something separate from them. And once the Africans inherited these countries, many people still see it that way. And then in Nigeria, oil is a major problem because it accrues so much resources to the government, where the government doesn't reckon with the people. People who pay the piper can call the tunes. But if you don't pay the piper, the government will not listen to you. That's one disconnect there. Because we don't process these materials, you don't have the technology to do it, and you rely on foreign companies to do it, you tend to prefer to work with those foreign companies rather than your own people. You put foreign companies and foreign interests before your own people. And then, because the political elite in most of Africa are connected and integrated into the global economy in a way that the general public are not integrated, so they lag behind. And so the political class is insensitive to what is going on and see them as a plantation where they can come and harvest whatever they want and go to London and Brussels and Washington, wherever they want to go, and live their lives as if nothing is going on in Africa. So the disconnect is clear. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening. And what you're going to have is masses of people who can come out and protest. And because of this connection between them across the world, the Gen Zs will come after the politicians. And this is just the beginning. Because if you ask me what is going on in Nigeria today, it's almost a test run. I feel that this is just really a test run. They're going to come back some other time. And when they do, it's going to be much, much more serious. You might even have it almost like the character of a revolution. Now, there you have two responses to this hunger problem which connects everybody. But in the interest of time, I'm going to stop. But you see the reactions in the different parts of the country, which informs the way politics have impacted these three groups since this Nigerian civil war.
Okay, before I come to you, Professor Olomola, for the last word, Dr. Muluka, what lessons, in your view, are there to take away from what we've witnessed in Kenya, what we've witnessed in Bangladesh, and what we've witnessed in Nigeria?
I think the most critical thing really is that the momentum among the young people is unstoppable. And I don't say this to the regimes that are in power as some kind of scarecrow thing. It is the reality, the philosophy of government, if we may take it where Professor Ifedi lives it, must change. The third world philosophy of government has been that when you get into power, it is about eating. We said in this country at some point, not so long ago, that it is our turn to eat. And you can hear a bit of ring of that even on in the ongoing almost panic campaigns around the country, where someone is saying that I'm now not the only Zakayo, there are many more of us, so we're going to look for these things together, pay taxes together. And those who have joined them have been talking about something called inclusivity. It's inclusivity in the patrimonial state. And the patrimonial state is a state in which those who are in government access the public resources that are available for purposes of buying and rewarding loyalty. Now that time is up. The digital bridging across the globe is giving the young people the opportunity to know what is happening in other parts of the world at the same time. Unlike the young man who grew up in the 60s in this country, the so-called baby boomers and the general excess, the young people in Nairobi today, in Nakuru, in Lagos, in Abuja, know what is happening in Perth. They know what is happening in New Zealand. They know what is happening in the United States of America. They know that our society can be led better, that the business of government is creating enabling environments. It's not about the people who are in power amassing wealth and showing it off ostentatiously, engaging in conspicuous, unashamed, conspicuous consumption of material. And that they...
Dr. Muluka, what lessons, in your view, are there to take away from what we've witnessed in Kenya, what we've witnessed in Bangladesh, and what we've witnessed in Nigeria?
I think the most critical thing really is that the momentum among the young people is unstoppable. And I don't say this to the regimes that are in power as some kind of scarecrow thing. It is the reality that there is somebody, or that there are groups of individuals with vested interests in any one of these countries and who are sponsoring the protests. If here in Kenya, for example, we say that it's Jimmy Wanjigi who is funding them, then we must say Jimmy Wanjigi has been in Bangladesh, he was in Sri Lanka 2 years ago, he is in Nigeria, that it is our turn to eat. And you can hear a bit of ring about the xenophobic protests that we are seeing in other parts of the world, especially in Europe. There's something happening, as Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels would say, a specter is haunting the third world. And this is the specter of youthful revolution. These uprisings, the next 1 month or 2 months, they may not achieve anything. Some revolutions are cumulative processes that take a number of months. The Iranian Revolution that I spoke of earlier started in January 1978. It matured in February 1979. So they can take time. The Mexican Revolution took about 20 years to reach maturity, going through different permutations, but we could talk about these for a longer time.
I hear, like, throughout history, just from what you've told us, there's a lot to learn. Your last word, Professor Olomola, in a minute?
Yeah, I will just summarize it, just like the last speaker said. We cannot.
All right, unfortunately, the internet connection has proved a challenge, but I do promise to bring you three back, because this sounds like a conversation. Yes, I can hear you now.
So, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Now, so I was saying that the resilience of Gen Z is giving way for more questioning and scrutiny. And this will continue the restiveness, and of course, the government must learn to start thinking the African way, because the Africans that are going to develop countries must take care of our homes. We need to clean up and enforcement agencies and poor oil ending on civil unrest must change, because it's one thing will escalate the issue. And lastly, the antithesis of the situation.
All right, unfortunately, we will not get to hear those last words, but that was Professor Omolade Olomola, who is a professor of Law, University of Ibadan, and she was joining us from Nigeria. We've had in studio Dr. Barak Muluka, who is a strategic communications advisor, as well as in academia. He has a PhD in political science as well as international relations. And joining us from across the ocean, Dr. John Patrick Ifedi, lecturer, political science, Howard University. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for contributing to the conversation this evening. We take a break. Citizen Weekend continues on the other side.